In the year 552, two steppe warriors called Bumin and Istemi led their Turkic Ashina tribe into battle and decisively defeated the Rouran Empire in Mongolia. With this tremendous victory, they established their own state, the Turk Khaganate, becoming known as the Göktürks, the Celestial Turks. Bumin ascended to the rank of Khagan, the supreme ruler, securing his rule over Otuken, power center of all steppe empires, while filling the vacant positions of the state administration with his Ashina relatives. But there was no time to celebrate, because the Rouran were far from finished, vowing for vengeance as refugees against the Turks from Chinese territory. At the same time, Istemi became viceroy in the west. He started a military campaign to liberate and unify all other Turkic tribes of the Eurasian steppe belt. This brought the Turk Empire into inevitable conflict with the Hephthalites, the last great Hunnic state in Central Asia. But he also made acquaintance with the Sogdians, an ancient people of merchants who were looking to expand their trading opportunities. This new Turkic-Sogdian bond brought the Turks into the next conflict against the mighty Sasanian Empire in Persia, but also established diplomatic relations with the Eastern Romans. As both the Sogdians and Romans were vying for Turkic support against the Persians, Istemi was forced into a complex tapestry of conspiracy, diplomacy, and war. But just as he had initiated the process of Turkic unification, and just as the Rouran started their counterattack in China, Bumin unexpectedly died. The exact date and cause of Bumin Khagan's death remain unknown, but his burial by the Ashina clan was a significant event. Dignitaries from Korea, China, and what the Turks referred to as Rome, likely Byzantium, reportedly attended his funeral in Otuken, Mongolia, according to the Orkhon inscriptions. This gathering suggests Bumin's impact on the region, particularly after his victory against the Rouran, which likely resonated across East and Central Asia. However, the presence of Roman delegates is debatable, considering the geographical and communication barriers of that era. The Korean Göktürk Empire was mentioned first among the foreign dignitaries. This might be an indication for the Turkic-Korean friendship that developed over time. Then, the Toy intervened. This was the National Assembly of the Turks. Another name of Mongolic origin would be Kurultai. At the Toy, the split of the empire was decided. As the current imperial territory stretched from Manchuria to Lake Balkhash in Kazakhstan, rule over the many peoples would certainly require lots of capable officials and gouverneurs. Given the Göktürk Empire's ambitious objective of expanding significantly further west, beyond the territorial reach of any preceding steppe empire, a strategic decision was made to divide the Khaganate for more efficient governance. The division was based on the Altai Mountains, a traditional stronghold of the Ashina. According to Turkic succession laws, Bumin's eldest son, Kara, who was referred to as Kulo in Chinese sources, was to become the new Khagan. This strategic split aimed to enhance the empire's administrative efficiency across its vast and diverse territories. This division, however, had profound implications for its future. The Göktürk Empire's eastern domain encompassed a vast and diverse landscape, including the Trans-Baikal region, the Gobi Desert, and the plains of eastern Mongolia. Its boundaries reached the Khingan Mountains to the east and the Yellow River to the south. The western territories of the Göktürk Empire, situated beyond the Altai Mountains, were entrusted to Istemi, the younger brother of Bumin. He assumed the title Yabgu, historically held by the pre-imperial Ashina chieftains. Following the resolution of the succession and the establishment of internal stability, both Kara and Istemi were assigned to address the persistent threats posed by the remnants of their former masters, both in the east and west, the Rouran. Following his defeat to Bumin, Anagui, the former Rouran Khagan of the Ujiulu clan, committed suicide, leaving his eldest son, Annihilation, to assume the title. Bumin's victory, however, led to the Göktürks seizing control of Göktürk, a key region for steppe empires. This forced the Ujiulu to flee south of the Yellow River, primarily into northern Kii territory, another state succeeding the Northern Wei dynasty. As Annihilation was married to the daughter of Emperor Wengshuan of Qi, he gained the emperor's support against the Turks. Wengshuan, a capable ruler, faced the threat of Kara's forces approaching Qi lands, intent on eliminating the Rouran forever. Concurrently, Wengshuan was engaged in a conflict with the Mongolic Kumoshi, the same group referred to as Tatabi by the Turks during Bumin's funeral. Given the historical alliance between the Turks and the Wei, the rival of the Qi, Wengshuan ordered the construction of a new Great Wall from Luliang to Xinzhou as a defensive measure. However, the anticipated invasion didn't transpire. Instead, Annihilation, who had been given refuge in Mai by Wengshuan, launched an unsuccessful attack against the Göktürks in Mongolia. Emperor Wengshuan of Qi, who had given refuge to numerous Rouran, directed Dengzhu, a distant cousin of Annihilation, to support him in a war against the Khitan in the northeast. After a series of setbacks involving Annihilation and the death of Dengzhu's son in this conflict, Wengshuan appointed Dengzhu to lead the Rouran. This once dominant dynasty had already suffered multiple defeats at the hands of the Turks, causing internal discontent. Following Dengzhu's failure, his son Kanti killed him and inherited command, but also failed in his retaliatory efforts against the Turks. Wengshuan, in an effort to strengthen Rouran resistance, granted Annihilation the title of Khagan. However, feeling betrayed by both his kin and his protector, Annihilation led a rebellion against the Qi Empire. This revolt ended in disaster, with Emperor Wengshuan enslaving over 30,000 Rouran, marking their final defeat in the east. A number of Rouran fled west to the Western Wei Empire. Their arrival caused concern for Yuan Tai, given their previous troubles and his alliance with the Turks through the Ashina-Tuoba Pact. Amidst this, Kara Khagan, Bumin's successor, passed away, leading to Bumin's next eldest son, Mukhan Khagan, ascending to the throne in 554. 2 years later, Mukhan initiated a final assault on the Rouran, led by Dengshuzi at the Turk-Wei border. Following Mukhan's request, Yuan Tai handed over Dengshuzi and 3,000 Rouran followers to the Turks, who were subsequently executed at the border. In just 4 years, the Rouran were decisively defeated in the east by the Göktürk leaders, Kara and Mukhan. Not only did they prevent the Rouran from reclaiming Göktürk, but they also demonstrated their ambitions to neighboring states. While the Wei remained allies and the Qi focused on defensive structures, the Göktürks confronted yet another eastern power, the Kingdom of Goguryeo. With a rich history extending back to ancient times, the Goguryeo held sway over substantial territories of the Korean peninsula and parts of Manchuria. The oldest known Korean chronicle, Samguk Sagi, documents an incident in 551 AD during the reign of King Yangwon. The Göktürks seemingly launched an attack on Goguryeo, laying siege to the fortresses of Sinsong and Paegam. In response, Goguryeo marshaled an army of 10,000 soldiers, successfully repelling the Turks who subsequently retreated to the steppe. The conflict resulted in the capture and possible enslavement of at least 1,000 Turks. However, the full extent of casualties on both the Turkic and Korean sides remains unknown. At the same time, the Silla kingdom took advantage of the situation and captured 10 fortresses in southern Goguryeo. This episode, mentioned briefly in the Samguk Sagi, indicates a Göktürk incursion into Korean territories that would predate the establishment of the empire by Bumin. Given the Ashina's stronghold in the Altai Mountains, it seems unlikely that the Young Turk would have circumvented Rouran forces to reach Goguryeo in the Far East. No Tae-don of Seoul National University suggests that while the invasion likely did take place, the chronicle may have inaccurately recorded the timeline of these events. Meanwhile, the Turkic Empire was steadily expanding westwards. In the spring of 554, Istemi Yabgu started the campaign at the Altai region with an army of 100,000 warriors, though estimates between 30,000 and 50,000 appear more realistic. A year later, he arrived at the Yedisu, which is the Turkish name for the Seven Water region, where 7 rivers flow into Lake Balkhash. This marked the complete occupation of the former Rouran Empire's territory, bringing all tribes and peoples from this area to the Altai under Ashina jurisdiction. This included the Hunnic Shionites and Uars, as well as Oguric peoples. The Rouran remnants, who had also fled westwards, were partly joined by Uar and Oguric groups, and together they continued their journey to the Caucasus area. Simultaneously, the Turks extended their control to the Tarim Basin in the south. The Turfan-Gaochang area, historically significant to the Ashina, who had spent decades there, was now under their influence. As the Turks took over the cities, each an independent city-state or kingdom, they gained control over the eastern segment of the Silk Road. This, in turn, angered the Hephthalites, who had been the main rival of the Rouran just a few years prior. Istemi's zone of influence now directly bordered that of the Hephthalites, the last great Hunnic state in Central Asia, in the Tarim Basin, as well as on the Sirdarya River, known as the Seyhun in Turkish. To the west of the Hunnic state, the Sasanian Persian Empire became aware of the Turks' rise. Under King Khosrow, known for his political reforms and campaigns against the Eastern Romans in Anatolia and Iraq, the Sasanians eyed the Hephthalite-controlled lands up to the Sirdarya, considering them part of the historic Persian domain. Between 555 and 557, an unexpected alliance formed between Khosrow and Istemi, with the shared goal of eradicating the Hephthalites from both the east and the west. The conflict was catalyzed by a call for aid from the Sogdians, an Iranic community of merchants and traders in a region historically challenging for Alexander the Great due to its stubborn tribes, the ancestors of the Sogdians. In their autonomous cities along the Western Silk Road, local nobles governed internal affairs. Subjugated by the Hephthalites, the Hunnic nobles' presence in the region is evidenced in the tombs and murals of wealthy Sogdian men. Around 557 or 560, the Sogdians, fearing oppressive measures from their Hunnic rulers who had previously not interfered in their internal matters, sought help. Interestingly, they turned not to the Persians, but to the Turks for assistance. Responding to this call, Istemi crossed the Sirdarya and invaded Hephthalite territory, reaching as far as the city of Bukhara in present-day Uzbekistan. This invasion even found mention in the Shahnameh, the renowned Persian epic Book of Kings by Ferdowsi. Ferdowsi recounts that despite the Hephthalites reinforcing Bukhara with auxiliary troops from Balkh and other garrisons, they could not withstand the Turk invasion. As Istemi took control of the Ark, the citadel and center of Hunnic power, he found that the Hephthalite nobles had already fled the city. Concurrently, Persian forces, comprising of war elephants, occupied the remaining Hephthalite territories. This coordinated assault marked the end of the Hephthalite Empire. By 560, the Göktürks had annexed all territories north of the Amudarja River, also known as the Oxus, while the Persians took control of the lands to the south. In a span of just 6 years, Istemi significantly expanded the Göktürk Empire through 2 successful campaigns against both the Western Rouran and the Hephthalites. The remnants of these defeated groups became instrumental in the escalating rivalry between the Turks and the forces of the Romans and Persians. Meanwhile, in the eastern part of the Khaganate, Mukhan emerged as an equally successful ruler. The combined efforts of the Yabgu and Khagan propelled the Göktürk Empire to unprecedented heights, making it the largest and most politically powerful state of its time. Mukhan's prowess, particularly in his dealings with the Chinese empires, would soon further demonstrate the might of the Turks. However, before engaging with these major powers, he first focused on neutralizing two smaller but significant threats, the Kyrgyz in the north and the Khitan in the east. Mukhan is often noted for his physical characteristics, similar to those of the Kyrgyz people, including eyes likened to lapis lazuli, a broad face, and a reddish complexion. While the Chinese contemporaries perceived him as somewhat wild, they also acknowledged his ferocity and vast knowledge, indicating his capabilities as a ruler. Discussions around Mukhan's physical description have sparked debates about the ethnic origins of the Göktürks, with some speculating an Indo-European connection, assisted by the presence of the tail of Ashina, the she-wolf and ancestor of the Göktürks, among the non-Turkic and Indo-Iranic Wusun. However, recent studies have dismissed these claims, reaffirming the Turkic origins of the Göktürks. Mukhan's daughter, born in 551, played a crucial role in the alliance between the Göktürks and the Zhou dynasty. Following the takeover of the Wei dynasty by the Zhou under the leadership of Yuan Tai, Mukhan reinforced the Ashina-Toba alliance by marrying his daughter to Zhou Emperor Wu, son of Yuan Tai, in 568. At the Zhou court in Chang'an, she was highly esteemed and known as Empress Ashina, though her personal name remains unknown. A 2023 study focusing on her genetics, with samples taken from her tomb that was rediscovered in 1991 in the Uyghur Autonomous Area in northwestern China, revealed that she was not of Indo-European origin. The research found a 97.7% genetic similarity with Northeast Asians and only a 2.2% association with Western Eurasians. This study underlines the genetic diversity within the Ashina clan and ancient Turkic people, while challenging any previous assumptions about their non-Asian and non-Turkic ethnic origins. Such claims can now finally be laid to rest. In the year following his decisive action against the Rouran remnants at the border with the now Zhou dynasty, Mukhan swiftly turned his focus to two key groups, the Kyrgyz in the north and the Khitan in the east. The Kyrgyz, near Lake Baikal and of ancient Turkic origin, had a history of resisting foreign domination. Having recently escaped Rouran rule, they were initially reluctant to align with the Ashina. However, Mukhan's victory led to their submission, albeit reluctantly, as noted by Chinese sources describing their acquiescence as done with grinding teeth. With the Turks allied with the Zhou dynasty and the opposing Qi dynasty hesitant to provoke a direct conflict, Mukhan was free to confront the Khitan. These proto-Mongolic people, originating from Manchuria and descendants of the Donghu like the Rouran, were subdued by Mukhan in 560. Following their subjugation, the Kyrgyz provided the Göktürks with gold and iron, commodities the Kyrgyz were skilled in mining. This influx of resources bolstered the Göktürk Khaganate's economic strength, allowing them to trade along the Silk Roads, which they now dominated, and to enhance their military capabilities with more and better heavy armor and weaponry. Mukhan, far from resting on his laurels, strengthened his alliance with Zhou Emperor Wu by joining the Zhou's war against the Qi dynasty. This long-anticipated conflict began in the winter of 563, when the Turks, alongside a Zhou army led by General Yang Zhong, crossed the Yellow River and launched an attack on Qi's secondary capital, Jinyang, in Taiyuan. Concurrently, Dashi Wu commanded another Zhou force attacking Pingyang from the west. Qi Emperor Wengshuan personally confronted the Turk forces at Jinyang. Overwhelmed by the invaders' skill, he initially attempted to flee the battlefield, but was persuaded to stay by his senior officers. The following spring, the Qi launched a successful counterattack against the Zhou army of Wang, after which Mukhan decided to leave the battlefield. As the Qi began to turn the tide, Dashi Wu's military presence in Pingyang also faltered. Despite failing to secure territorial gains, the Zhou showcased formidable military strength previously unseen. Meanwhile, the Turks significantly disrupted the Taiyuan province through widespread plundering, leaving it in ruins. Following the stabilization and consolidation of the Göktürk Empire's eastern front, significant developments in the western region led the Turks to become involved in a long-standing geopolitical conflict. Upon assuming control of the Sogdia region, the Turks established cordial relations with the local populace. This cultural integration signified a deeper socio-political alliance. The Turks assumed the role of protectors for Sogdian cities, safeguarding the trade routes, while the Sogdians contributed to the economic prosperity of the Göktürk Khaganate through their administrative skills. A notable instance of this symbiotic relationship is exemplified in the tomb of Anjian, a prosperous Sogdian, which depicts a clear camaraderie with the Turks. The Sogdians realized the potential of their new overlords, who treated them kindly and tolerant, perhaps more so than the Hephthalites once did. They saw potential in conflict because the Turks were just about to start a war with the Persians. Shortly after the end of Hephthalite rule, the Sasanians under Khosrow consolidated their rule up to the Oxus. However, one faithful day, Khosrow was informed of a military incursion not at the frontier, but deep within Iranian territory in Tabaristan, also known as Mazandaran. Istemi had seriously led an army into Iran without declaring war. In response, Khosrow mobilized a Sasanian army and proceeded to the highlands of Tabaristan. Upon meeting Istemi, Khosrow sought a diplomatic resolution, proposing that the Oxus River be recognized as the definitive boundary between both empires. Istemi accepted and, in turn, married off a daughter of his to Khosrow. This woman would become the mother of a future Persian king, known as Hormizd IV. The Turks retreated to Sogdia, leading to de-escalation and a period of peace between both empires. In a pivotal turn of events, the Sogdians, having successfully smuggled silk worms from China through Mongolia to the Eastern Roman Empire, approached Istemi. The smuggling had significantly undermined the Chinese and Persian silk monopoly, previously unchallenged, and shifted the economic balance across Eurasia. The Sogdians, capitalizing on this situation, requested Istemi to negotiate with the Sasanian Empire for permanent trading rights. Istemi, albeit with hesitation, sent a Sogdian envoy to Ctesiphon, the Persian capital in Iraq. There, Khosrow purchased all the goods brought by the Sogdian merchants, only to publicly burn them in a dramatic display before the Persian populace. The stunned merchants returned to Istemi, who then dispatched a second envoy, this time comprising Turkic officials, as a gesture of goodwill during peacetime. The reception in Ctesiphon initially appeared favorable. However, the situation took a dire turn when, during an evening banquet, several guests fell ill, leading the Turkic officials to suspect poisoning. They promptly departed for Istemi's court. This incident sent a threatening message from the Persians. Sogdian trade was unwelcome, and Turk interference in Persian matters was not tolerated either. Khosrow's actions, rather than deterring Istemi, inadvertently drove him towards an unlikely alliance with another major power, the Romans. In the 6th century, the Byzantine Empire, led by Emperor Justinian, reclaimed vast territories of the former Roman Empire in Europe and Africa, while still contending with the Persians. Byzantium is a modern term, as its people continued to call themselves Romaioi, Romans. With that in mind, Maniak, a prominent Sogdian merchant and politician, persuaded Istemi to establish diplomatic ties with the Romans in the name of the Turks. The Sogdians wanted to circumvent Persian markets whose access had been blocked, while the Ashina thought of gaining a political ally in conflict against Khosrow. As Maniach and Turk officials journeyed westward, Maniach's son was fostered at Istemi's court, signifying deep mutual trust. In Constantinople, the envoy met Emperor Justin II, Justinian's successor, who was impressed by the Turkic Empire's accomplishments so far. He asked his chief diplomat Zemachus to accompany Maniach back to Asia, indicating his interest in a long-term alliance with the Turks. Following an arduous journey across the Black Sea shores and the Ponto-Caspian steppe, Zemachus finally arrived in Sogdia. Maniach introduced him to the local Ashina governor. Zemachus was offered iron by the local Turks, who were accustomed to blacksmithing for centuries. After passing various Turkic ceremonies, the envoy was transported to a mountain in the east called Akdağ, the Golden Mountain, probably at the Altai. Here, Zemachus noted interesting aspects of Turkic life, which included gilded thrones, silver animals, hangings, and clothing of figured silk. In general, the Turks had erected statues of peoples and animals which, according to Menander Protector, who conveyed this very report, were in no way of lesser quality than those in Constantinople. Then the envoy was introduced to the mighty Istemi Khagan, sitting on his golden throne. Zemachus brought forward a cordial message by Emperor Justin, signaling the wish for an alliance. Istemi replied warmly and in a positive manner, accepting the alliance. Zemachus followed Istemi to Talas in Kyrgyzstan, where he also witnessed the outcry of a Persian diplomat who was present during dinner. The Persian urged Istemi not to accept the alliance, but the Turk ignored him. Instead, he informed Zemachus of an invasion of Persian lands. The Byzantine diplomat was sent back to Constantinople with a group of at least 106 Turkic merchants and officials who would take permanent residence in the Roman capital. On their way, they had been ambushed by a 4,000-men-strong Persian army in the Caucasus, but the Alans, loyal to the Turks, safeguarded the envoy. Thus, the alliance between Turks and Romans had been established. The Persians, taking note of these developments, undertook preparations for an escalation of the conflict. This meant war.